So I've talked before about what my favorite class in Space Marine 2 is, and I've even talked about what my least favorite classes have been. However, I haven't really talked about what I felt is the best overall class, and that's what I want to talk about today, and why it's the Vanguard. So, real quick, this video, while it is just strictly my opinion, I'm going to try and pull from as many facts from within the game as I can to best support it. Also, I just want to reiterate that even though I do feel that this is the best class in the game, that doesn't mean that it's going to be the best in every situation. However, I don't feel that there's any scenario where the Vanguard just does not perform adequately enough, and I feel as long as you're a competent player, you're going to be able to get quite a bit out of this class, not just for yourself, but also for your team. And as always, there are no genuinely bad classes in this game. Everyone is usable, even on the highest difficulties. But more importantly, they're all fun, and I think that's the most important thing, is that you're enjoying your time while playing this game. But let's go right ahead, and I'm going to jump into my reasons, and I think the first thing we got to start off with is just the weapons that you have access to, and how the Vanguard was really set up to be kind of similar to the tactical, in that at its core, I do feel that it is very much a jack of all trades class. Now, you don't have as many options as the tactical. However, all the options that you do have access to are really good in their own regard. So, looking at primary weapons, you have access to the Oculus bolt rifle, which is currently what I'm using in this gameplay here. But you also have the Instigator bolt carbine, the regular bolt carbine, which actually has two different functions. You can run it as either a submachine gun or almost as like a DMR. And then finally, you have the Melta rifle, which, if you're new to this game, it's essentially the shotgun in Space Marine 2. All of these options are incredible. Some of them do perform better at close range, while others are more geared towards longer ranges. But again, whenever you play the Vanguard, you have access to all those different options, which I feel is phenomenal. Looking then at your secondary weapons, you have some of the stronger choices in the game, such as the heavy bolt pistol, the Volkite pistol, and the new Inferno pistol. Again, it may come down to personal preference, whichever one you want to run. However, again, they're all extremely strong in their own right, and you can set it up to match, hey, maybe you're running the Melta rifle, and you want to be able to cover down on the fact that that really only excels up close. You can grab the heavy bolt pistol or the Volkite and deal with enemies at extended ranges. Or if you're using something like the Oculus bolt carbine and you want to engage targets much closer, you can just slap on the Inferno pistol, and now you pretty much have all your bases covered. On top of that, looking over at the melee options, you have access to not just the combat knife, but also the chainsword as well. Now, while I personally do prefer the power sword, and that's probably just because Bulwark is my favorite class, and I feel that weapon really does a good job of fitting with it thematically, I would say I do feel that the chainsword is probably the best overall melee weapon in the game. And given that the Vanguard has access to it, that's just another point in its corner. However, I don't think it's just with weapon selection that the Vanguard really succeeds. I think a lot of it comes down to the different perk options that you have, and honestly, they just do a phenomenal job of keeping you alive and just making the game sometimes feel like you're playing on autopilot. So the first two perks that we're going to discuss here are Launch Restoration and the regular Restoration perk. Now, both of these are prestige perks, but you do gain access to at least Launch Restoration right off the bat. For the regular Restoration, you'll have to gain access to that after prestiging at least a second time, but you will need to prestige at least twice to gain access to both of them. Essentially, what they do is they can keep your armor topped off almost damn near indefinitely. So with Launch Restoration, anytime you grapple onto an enemy, you're automatically going to get back 1 bar of armor. Now, the grapple launcher does have a pretty generous recharge rate to it, so you're going to be able to hook on to enemies back and forth fairly consistently, and every time you do that, you're getting back 1 bar of armor. Now, for the regular restoration perk, anytime you kill 10 enemies in rapid succession, this is also a perk that you do see on some other classes as well. Again, you're going to get back 1 bar worth of armor. When you combine these two, it's going to be extremely easy to constantly keep your armor topped off as long as you're getting kills and hooking onto enemies. Now, that's not the only way that the Vanguard excels at survivability. Let's go ahead and talk about the elephant in the room, and probably the one perk that everybody was expecting me to talk about, Unmatched Zeal. So Unmatched Zeal, for those of you that don't know, is a perk that allows you to heal 30% of your health anytime you execute a Terminus or Extremist level enemy. Now, while you may not have a whole lot of opportunities to do this in the regular operation setting, we did just get a new game type in PVE with Siege, and there is an absolute abundance of Extremists that you're going to see. So it's almost going to feel like you just constantly have a stim kit that activates every time you execute one of the bigger enemies. Now, on top of that, let's say there's maybe no more Extremists or Terminus left on the field. Well, you also have access to Adrenaline Rush at level 25, which is going to allow you to restore 5% of your health off of just executing a regular Majoris. Now, the Vanguard is the only class outside of the Bulwark and its Invigorating Icon perk that is going to allow you to heal. However, even with the Bulwark, you're not going to get the same level, or rather consistency of healing that the Vanguard has to offer, making it, again, once you look at how often you're able to recharge your armor and heal without having to use up a stim kit, it can be really, really hard to go down when you're playing as the Vanguard. Now, on the topic of survivability, there's three other perks that I want to talk about real quick, that being Moving Target, Close Combat Focus, and then Restless Fortitude. So what do these 3 perks do? Well, for me personally, the Vanguard is a class that I love using in close quarters. I think it really, really excels at that. Plus, I just love the melee combat, and those executions are oh so beautiful. But what these 3 perks do is they offer a varying range of range damage reduction, which honestly, as someone who really, I don't want to say I don't like the Assault class, but don't really care for it all that much. One of the main reasons for that is because it's a melee-focused class. However, a lot of times I feel like I'm very easily torn apart by range damage. The Bulwark's workaround for this is the fact that you have a giant shield that you're able to deflect a fair bit of it. However, even then, the shield only protects so much of your body, and if enemies are shooting you from one of your openings, that damage can stack up really quick. Now, the Vanguard doesn't have a direct way to combat that range damage. However, you can get some absolutely monstrous range damage reduction by combining all 3 of those perks. If I recall offhand, I think you're capable of technically getting up to around 60% range reduction bonuses going off. Plus, I know with like the heavy, there's a team perk that allows you to gain even more damage resistance. So this opens up the opportunity for you to be right up close, engaging in melee combat or even range combat. You know, maybe you got your melter rifle out or your Inferno pistol, but you're going to be able to tear things apart from up close, and you're not going to feel super worried about all the small little enemies along the sides just taking free pop shots at you. To me, it's an absolutely huge thing to combine all 3 of those, plus with just how naturally well the Vanguard excels at close quarters combat. Again, you factor that in with Unmatched Zeal, Adrenaline Rush, and then the 2 restoration perks. It really does at times feel like you've just entered a cheat code and it's impossible to go down. Now, something else that I want to talk about, and we're going to now focus a little bit more on the offensive stuff that the perks have to offer. There's 2 that I really like, Tip of the Spear and Battlefield Awareness. So for Battlefield Awareness, anytime you're surrounded by at least believe it's more than 2 enemies. I could be wrong on that. You're going to get about a 10% range damage increase. For battle aware, for tip of the spear, after you use your grapple hook and you get right up close to something, you're going to get another 10% damage increase. So if you use your grapple hook and you fly into a big group of enemies, you're going to immediately start off with a 20% damage increase. Now, while it's not permanent, it is still a decent increase. And again, if you're using something like the melter rifle, a couple seconds might be all that you need to take out just a giant group of enemies. Now, finally, the last perk that I want to talk about is consecutive execution, because I'll be honest, this is a perk that I never really touched a whole lot until I started playing Siege mode, but it has been an absolute godsend. So, as you've seen in this gameplay, I've been able to drop quite a few melt-a-bombs without actually having to pick them up off the map, and that's what we use consecutive execution for. So anytime you get 10 kills in rapid succession, you're going to refill your equipment charge. Now, this is the only perk really on the list that has some sort of drawback, and that is that it has a 90-second cooldown timer. Which 90 seconds, sometimes that'll go by really, really quick. Other times, it might feel like an eternity. However, if you are willing to suffer through that short little minute and a half wait, and you get 10 kills rather quick, you're going to get a free grenade off of that. Now, again, you can combine this with the Tacticals Grenade Regeneration perk, and there's just going to be times where if you're not getting a perk back, or if you're not getting a grenade back from that, but you get it back through your 10 kills, it's going to feel like you're indefinitely topped off on grenades. And again, it's just something that's going to allow you to quickly remove enemies off the map and delete entire hordes like it's nothing. So these are my reasons that I feel that the Vanguard is currently the best class in the game, at least on the PVE side of things. Again, it's not going to be the best at every little thing. You know, if you're looking for strictly range damage, sniper, heavy, they probably have that on lock. If you're looking for just maybe a true melee build, might gravitate more towards the Bulwark and what it has to offer. However, like I said, I feel in the vast majority of scenarios, Vanguard's going to be able to get any job done that you're looking for, and it makes an absolutely phenomenal addition to any team composition that you could run within Space Marine 2. But feel free to let me know down in the comments, what do you feel is the best class in the game? Is there maybe something that I overlooked? Again, I enjoy hearing from all of you, but as always, thank you, and we will catch you next time.